Welcome to the Jim Brown interview series, the latest edition of a tribute to the former Executive Associate Dean of Journalism for 28 years at IUPUI in Indianapolis. My name is Malcolm Moran. I'm the director of the Sports Capital Journalism program within the Department of Journalism and Public Relations. And this is the fourth in a series of interviews, and this one is going to be a little different. In the past, we would have a student talking to an alumnus that was accomplished in the industry. Today, I'm going to be talking to somebody who is a student and an accomplished person who is not yet an alumnus, but will be very shortly. And that's Bryan Carter, who's had a distinguished career in sports television production, working for and with some of the biggest names in the history of the industry. But as I mentioned, he's also a student working toward a master's in sports journalism at IUPUI. And in the spring, to confuse you even more, he will be teaching in the Department of Journalism and Public Relations. So Bryan, thank you for being here and doing this. And I guess the best place to start is, how did you get here? How did this happen?
Well, I appreciate the kind introduction, Malcolm. I always had a desire to teach. And in my formative years in the industry, I worked as a substitute teacher way back right after I graduated from IU Bloomington on the side, and enjoyed teaching. And it was always in the back of my mind that maybe it was something I would return to. And when I did a little more investigating into it a few years ago, I found that I needed an advanced degree to teach at the collegiate level, which is what my primary interest in teaching would be. So here I am.
So why IUPUI?
Well, I want to do something with sports, and I looked into the sports journalism program, and it just seemed to make sense, honestly. It just looked like a well-run program with folks like yourself, and I talked to Chris Lamb as well, and I was just impressed by the both of you, and yeah, I'm one semester in, and so far, hopefully, so good.
One of the things that came through early on in our class was your description of how you first got into the industry and the amount of perseverance that was required to just stay with it, which is such an important lesson for students now because they don't know how all that works. I mean, could you share what your path was into the business?
Sure. I graduated from IU Bloomington, like I said, in the early '80s, and at that time you really didn't have much in terms of sports television other than the three networks. There was no Fox even at that time. ABC, CBS, and NBC had their sports departments, and I just had the good fortune to work as a runner on a college football game my senior year, and I slid some copies under the great Keith Jackson's hotel room door, and that was like the greatest thing I'd done in my life at that point. So, and I was studying telecommunications, so hey, I'm a sports nut, so trying to do something in this industry just made sense. And things were going pretty well. I made some inroads with ABC. I worked on a college football crew with Al Michaels as his stage manager, and got to fly around the country with ABC Sports, and it was like, this is dream job. This I got to do this, and was just on the cusp of hopefully getting hired by ABC Sports, and they were sold to a group called Capital Cities, and budget cuts, hiring freezes, and there went my dream job for the time being. So I stayed in the industry, just working on weekends, gigs wherever I could get them for the next 4 years. Hopefully get my foot in the door somehow, someplace. And I was just about to give up. I was actually living in San Diego, had a major gig that I was going to work for about a month on, had it canceled. And I remember driving back to my condo and just crying, just like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in my late 20s and I'm still pursuing this thing, and wow. I didn't really think I was going to make it, didn't know what I was going to do, but I thought, I'm going to give it another month. And lo and behold, a few hundred prayers answered, and I got a call from a friend at Turner Sports in Atlanta, And he was getting promoted and said, I'd like to recommend you to fill my job, to take my job.
And that was a relatively new operation at that point.
Yeah, it was. Turner was really 3 years as far as being a national entity. They were in NBA basketball at that time. Superstation TBS was where you saw a lot of Braves games, was making inroads as far as cable. There still wasn't TNT; it was just TBS Sports at that time. But yeah, got a job with Turner, moved to Atlanta, and been in the business ever since.
So when I'm helping students that are waiting for word about an internship application, 4 days is a lifetime for them.
Yeah.
4 years? I mean, where did the sense of hope come from? And did you have people supporting you, or was it just, I've got to do this? I mean, how did you get through that?
I did have family support. I think it was because I just kept getting a little taste. You know, I was working as a stage manager for ESPN and doing some things on the West Coast. I was living, like I said, in San Diego. I did the Goodwill games for Turner in Moscow. So I went to Moscow for 6 weeks. So I just kept getting this little taste of it. Like I said, my foot was sort of in the door. When I lived in San Diego, I worked at Jack Murphy Stadium on the Diamond Vision board and did statistics and stuff for all the Padres and Chargers games. So that's like 100 games a year. So I still had a little taste of it. I just wasn't getting a full-time gig. And
I saw a Giants-Chargers game there once when they would shoot off that cannon every time they scored.
Yeah.
And the Giants were not good at all. And it was torture.
Yeah.
I mean, they scored 40-something. And I felt like that cannon was going off every 5 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
Part of your early industry education, which you really couldn't duplicate it today, was being part of the weekly circus called Monday Night Football, when it was the appointment viewing in all of sports television. What was it like to be around that cast of characters and just that event? It really was an event every week.
Yeah, it was an absolute traveling circus. I got to do maybe 6 games just as a runner, and I'd get hired to work in the booth to go get stuff for the announcers. So you're privy to all the pregame shenanigans and everything else. One quick story just to show how extravagant the spending was. We were doing a game in St. Louis, and our TV trucks were parked just across the street from, there was a Marriott hotel where the crew stayed, and literally the side entrance was a block, maybe a block and a half, to the trucks where the announcers would go to. Nevertheless, there were 3 limos parked at that entrance, and Frank Gifford came out, got in a limo, and they would just do a U-turn, and he was in the limo 15 seconds and would get out and repeat the process. Howard Cosell would get in, Don Meredith would get in, and they would each take their separate limos that block. But yeah, Malcolm, it was crazy. I saw it on camera once where Gifford and Cosell are doing their thing back and forth, and Don gets off of his stool and gets on the floor and is like looking up at Howard like this just to try to make him laugh. It was wow. And the fans, the whole stadium would be focused on the booth. You could see it, like everybody looking when the lights would come on in the booth where they were doing their open, and security, and it was a little less than the Beatles maybe, but it was a rock show.
Close enough, though.
Yeah.
So what did you take away from experiences like where you're part of the crew, but you're exposed to all this stuff going on around you?
Well, you learn that it's show business. There's a lot of even acting that announcers kind of have to do. You're putting on a show. I think that, and that they're just people just like us. That's the one thing you kind of forget when you see these almost these icons on television. Then when you're around them, they're just men and women like the rest of us, and they put their pants on, as the old saying goes, just like the rest of us. So you learn to not be as intimidated. Maybe the star factor kind of diminishes a little bit. Yeah.
And then, as the business has evolved, you have described in class just the evolution over the last 10 to 12 years, but especially in the last couple of years, of the production work being done in remote, centralized locations as opposed to the truck. If you could share your observations, and just as important, what is this going to mean to the industry that students are going to be going into?
I hope I know what it's going to be like, because it's changing so rapidly. I've been in the business close to 40 years, since my runner days. The industry has changed more maybe in the last 7 to 8 years than it did in the previous 30 plus years combined. Just with, as you were describing, these centralized locations, which are primarily, as you would guess, in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Charlotte, North Carolina has some stuff with ESPN too. But basically, instead of having the entire crew on site to do the production of games, you've got a lot of people, like, this is all via the internet, just to get that out there. The camera feeds, the audio can all go to a centralized control room. So the people that live in Chicago, for example, just walk or just come to work instead of flying to Bloomington, Indiana, or wherever. So you're saving immense travel costs when you multiply that by hundreds of shows. That's not going to go away. The viewer at home does not really typically really notice the difference. Some of us that have been in the industry, we get it. We see things that are off a little bit. But like I said, it's not going away. So what that means is you can do a lot of work if you're in a Los Angeles or a New York, if you get into the business and not have to travel. Some people that appeals to. Personally, I miss being on site because you don't get the vibe, the energy of the game necessarily if you're just in a control room. But yeah, it's like I said, it's not going away. So I think that appeals to some people, and some people it does not.
Well, and as you were describing in class, what's really lost is the day before the game and all the preparation, getting into practice, just sitting around like this and talking to players and coaches and all the things you can learn from that. And so now that's replaced by a Zoom call, which probably is not going to be as rewarding.
It's not, and that really applies to the announcers and the talent, because they're the ones that really miss that in-person interaction. Now, announcers are still calling a lot of games from site, but when they're not, and we have to do, like I said, these Zoom calls, it's just not the same as going to a game day shoot around and actually seeing the players and going through their preparation and learning, frankly, for the announcers, you learn what somebody's like better here in person as opposed to a Zoom call.
Well, and they'll share things.
Yeah.
Once you gain that trust.
Yeah.
And you wonder how that's going to affect the ability of an analyst or a play-by-play person long-term to develop the kind of relationships. So when there is some sensitive plot line that a broadcaster can't avoid, how well are they going to be able to tell those stories?
Yeah. I probably should have mentioned it. Now, a lot of the bigger shows, you're really big, like Sunday Night Football, almost all your NFL games. Those are you've still got a truck on site, and everybody, it's like business as usual, like we've always done things. But it's the day-to-day, all your like weekly college basketball games right now, a lot of college football, the just run-of-the-mill games that are on daily. Those are the ones that really go into the at-home production model.
So you've made it through a semester. Things are going okay. you're probably going to get to teach a little earlier than you anticipated when you started thinking
a lot
about
earlier, maybe. Yeah.
So have you had a chance to begin to think about like how you take the nearly 40 years, I mean, I can relate to this challenge, how do you take that and frame it for a semester's worth of work for highly motivated students?
Yeah, I'm really excited to do it. But I think it's going to be a little bit of learn as you go. But yeah, I've thought a lot about how I want to condense things, not talk over anybody's heads, keep it really basic. And I think I'll just kind of see how well people are grasping what I'm trying to get across. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you like sports and you like television, and this is a point I thought about this that should be made, is even if you're a journalism student and you just want to, you're just thinking, I just want to write. Well, almost all your writers now have to do some sort of have an on-camera presence. Even if you're just writing for a paper, after a game, you're filing something, a 5-minute description maybe with another writer. So you've got to learn the basics of how am I on camera? How do I talk? How do I get relaxed in doing this? So the two are really intertwined. The days of just being just a writer and just, the only person you're responsible for is just you and your laptop. I think those days are gone.
Cretaceous or Jurassic? I'm not sure which era, but you're right.
Yeah.
Cross every platform.
Yeah.
And what we've discovered with some students here is that they've come to really enjoy an aspect of storytelling that they were not thinking about at all when they got here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But being exposed to that kind of class just kind of catapults them.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I hope comes out of my class is that you're going to get exposed to some things, some avenues you probably hadn't thought about, because you're going to learn some things about how, as we say, how the sausage is made, how TV is made. And there's a lot of attractive side jobs there, videotape operator, camera person, programming. There's a lot of jobs that are affiliated that you're really not going to learn about until you get some exposure to the industry a little bit. So I think there's more there than just learning, on camera.
Oh, and I'm sure one of the things that you're going to emphasize is the value of doing that tedious task efficiently and with a smile on your face. Like even if you think, boy, this is beyond boring, because that's how you get the next challenge.
Yeah.
Hey, Bryan did a great job pulling cable for us last Saturday. What can we give him now?
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, my first jobs were to get soft drinks for announcers and go make copies and go deliver. And it's like, that's not what I'm saying, oh, wow, this is going to be my career. But I did it to the best of my ability and just, it wasn't a pain. And I did it, hopefully did it with a smile. And just be likable. Just you got to want people to want to be around you. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you the 22-year-old me would have been at the front of the line, and I guarantee it, Bryan, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being here in the first place.
Yeah.
And thank you for being a guest on the 4th edition of the Jim Brown interview series. Thanks to Bryan, also to several others who were critical in putting this together. John Greenhoe on the other side of the glass, Emily Turnier for coming up with the template, and Chris Lamb, the chair of the Department of Journalism and Public Relations at IUPUI. I'm Malcolm Moran, the director of the Sports Capital Journalism Program, and we'll see you the next time.